She called CPS on me in the middle of the night, but that's not what broke me. It was the baby's swing, moved just an inch from where I left it. That's how I knew. She'd been inside our house. My mother-in-law crossed a line, and now I have no choice but to fight back. The knock came at 2:14 a.m. 3 short raps. Too deliberate to be random, too calm to be urgent. But my stomach turned instantly. I don't know why. Maybe because silence at that hour should be sacred. Maybe because, as a mother, I've trained myself to wake at the smallest sound. But mostly because nothing good ever starts with a knock in the middle of the night. I slid out of bed, heart already thumping. The baby monitor was quiet. David, my husband, stirred but didn't wake. I pulled my robe tight, padded barefoot to the front door, and peered through the peephole. Police. 2 officers. 1 male, 1 female. Hands visible. Faces composed, but unreadable. 1,000 thoughts raced at once. Had there been a break-in nearby? An accident? Were they even real officers? I cracked the door, keeping the chain latched. Yes? The woman stepped forward. Mrs. Lewis? Yes. We received a welfare concern from Child Protective Services. Someone reported potential neglect or unsafe conditions involving your child. We need to verify everything is all right. I felt my whole body go cold. What? The man added. We're just here to confirm. May we come in? I stared. And then, I don't even know why, I turned and looked at the empty baby swing in the living room. It was a small thing, but that's when the dread hit like a freight train. That swing had been moved, slightly, but I hadn't touched it, and David hadn't either. We always left it by the window. I closed the door just enough to unhook the chain, then opened it again. Give me a second, I said. My voice was strange, distant. I turned back into the house and whispered, David, wake up now. He sat up fast, blinking at me in the dim hallway light. What's wrong? CPS, I said. They're at the door. Someone filed a report. That woke him up all the way. 15 minutes later, the officers were gone. They'd looked around, noted the stocked fridge, the child gate at the stairs, the sleeping toddler. They said it all looked fine. But still, someone had made a complaint. Anonymous, of course. After they left, David paced. I stood at the window, staring into the dark. Only one name came to mind. His mother, and that goddamn swing. The thing is, this wasn't the beginning. Not really. It was the first open shot, maybe. But the war had started long before. It started with the jokes. Little digs about how I held the baby wrong. How I should be feeding him real food, not those fancy organic pouches. Then came the gifts. Strange ones. A giant antique-looking cradle, beautiful but warped, and reeking of mildew. I refused to use it. She insisted we accept it. Then she cried when we didn't put it in the nursery. Next, it was unannounced visits. I was just in the neighborhood, except she lives an hour away. She'd bring casseroles we never asked for, walk into our kitchen like she owned it, pick up my son without asking, then smile like a saint. David would beg me to let it slide. She means well, she just doesn't know how to help. But it wasn't help. It was control. And now, this? A CPS call? The first time she told me I wasn't fit, it was over dinner. The baby had been crying all day. I was exhausted. She glanced at me and said, You know, not every woman is meant to be a mother. Some just aren't wired for it. David hadn't even looked up from his plate. After that night, I started locking the nursery window. I didn't want to believe it. But something in her eyes, calm, cold, certain, told me she was capable of anything, that she believed our son belonged to her more than me. That if she had to lie, manipulate, or destroy our family to rescue him, she would. David still clings to the idea that she's just misunderstood. But he didn't see what I saw in her smile when I refused the cradle. He didn't see the look she gave me when I caught her sneaking baby clothes into the garage. Old things, yellowed with age, things she said she'd saved. All labeled, all folded, all with our son's name. Only, we hadn't told anyone his name before the birth, except her. And now, the swing had been moved. That was her signature. Small enough to be ignored, meaningful enough to be noticed. Message received. But she wasn't just nudging now. She'd fired the first real shot, and I swear I felt something in me shift. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. I was done being polite, done trying to keep the peace. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. The next morning, David tried to explain it away. She probably didn't mean it, he said, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. You know how my mom is. Overdramatic. Maybe she was just worried. I stared at him across the kitchen table, barely able to process how calmly he said that. She called CPS, David, I said, voice low. That's not overdramatic. That's malicious. That's fucking dangerous. He flinched at the tone but didn't argue. He just stared at his mug, like maybe if he didn't look at me, this would all blow over. That was our dynamic lately. He avoided. I absorbed. He deflected. I held the line. Until now. I didn't sleep after the visit. I sat in the nursery watching our son breathe, watching shadows crawl across the floor as dawn edged in. By noon, I'd replayed every weird thing she'd said over the past year. You're lucky he's alive. You were such a sickly baby yourself. If anything ever happened to you, I'd raise him like my own. Don't you ever get overwhelmed? I wouldn't blame you if you needed a break. Bullshit dressed as concern. Wrapped in lace and guilt and always delivered with a smile. I had brushed it off. Every time. Because that's what women are trained to do. Smile, nod, keep the peace. But peace had left this house the moment I opened that door at 2:14 a.m. Later that afternoon, a box arrived on the porch. No return address. David brought it in without a second thought. Probably something I ordered, he said. It wasn't. Inside, a pale pink baby blanket. Monogrammed. Hand-stitched. But not with our son's initials. With hers. DL, his mother's initials. And tucked inside the folds, a copy of a custody petition. Blank, unfiled, but notarized. My breath stopped. I held it up to David like it was a live grenade. She's escalating, I said. He turned white. That's just symbolic, he muttered. It doesn't mean anything. It's a fucking warning. I was done pretending this was normal. I called a lawyer. David didn't argue, but he didn't help either. He just sat there, head in hands, while I listed everything. The gifts, the CPS visit, the swing, the blanket, the fucking notarized petition. The lawyer didn't even blink. She'd seen this before. She's building a narrative, she said, undermining your competence. If she tries to file, she'll need a pattern. It looks like she's trying to establish one. I felt sick. She'll never stop, I said. No, the lawyer replied. Not unless you make her. That night I locked every window. I double-checked the baby monitor. I changed the Wi-Fi password. David thought I was being paranoid. Are you really going to treat my mom like some kind of criminal? I looked him dead in the eye. She already is. She just hasn't been arrested yet. He didn't sleep in our bed that night, and I didn't care. That was the moment I realized. I might be married, but I was already alone in this fight. I didn't answer the door when she came the next day. She rang twice, knocked 3 times, left a pie on the porch like this was some fucking Hallmark movie. I watched her through the peephole. No smile this time. Just standing there, eyes scanning the windows like she knew I was watching. David opened it after she left. You could have at least said hi. I didn't respond. He picked up the pie, carried it to the kitchen, and opened the foil. It's apple, your favorite. I walked over, took the knife out of the block, and sliced through the pie in one clean line. Tucked inside the filling was a small envelope. White, unmarked. Inside, a photograph. It was me, at the grocery store, wearing sweatpants, pushing the stroller, taken from a distance, from behind. You see this shit? I held it up to David, my hand shaking. He stared at it, then at me. Maybe it's not from her. Who else would send me a fucking surveillance photo hidden in dessert, David? He didn't have an answer. That night, I set up security cameras. Doorbell, backyard, hallway, nursery, all connected to my phone. I started keeping a journal, too. Times, dates, comments, just in case. Our lawyer said documentation was power, and I was going to arm myself with everything she never expected me to have. That weekend, it got worse. We got a letter from CPS, again. This one said they needed to schedule a follow-up. The first complaint had been inconclusive. Now someone, her, had submitted new allegations. Unsanitary conditions, emotional instability, child left unattended. I wanted to scream. Our son had never been alone for a second. I breastfed. I didn't even shower unless David was home. But this was the game. She wasn't trying to win custody. Not yet. She was trying to paint me unfit, piece by piece, complaint by complaint. And David, he was crumbling. Couldn't take a side. Kept trying to stay neutral like that was even fucking possible. She's my mom, he kept saying. And he's our son, I snapped back. Pick a side. Because this fence you're straddling, it doesn't go all the way through court. The night before the CPS visit, I found her standing at the edge of our driveway. 3 a.m., just standing there, arms crossed, staring at the house like she was waiting for the roof to collapse. I didn't call the cops. I filmed her, silent, unmoving. 37 seconds of footage. She walked away eventually, disappeared into the dark like the ghost she'd become in our lives. The next morning, David finally cracked. I didn't think she'd go this far, he whispered. I didn't think she'd try to take him. And that's when I saw it. Real fear in his eyes. Good. Because that's what it would take for him to understand what I'd known for months. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about survival. The CPS agent's shoes squeaked against our hardwood. She walked slow, quiet, methodical, like she was cataloging the house with her eyes. David stood behind her like a prisoner waiting for his sentence. I sat on the couch, holding our son in my lap, arms wrapped around him like armor. The agent's voice was pleasant but firm. Any firearms in the home? No, I answered. Have you ever left your child unattended? Never. She took notes on a clipboard. I watched every mark of her pen like it might decide our future. After an hour of questions and inspection, she stood. Everything appears in order. I don't see any immediate cause for concern. David exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. I didn't, because I knew this wasn't over. The woman handed me a copy of the report in progress. Just a heads up, she added gently. The reporting party mentioned they'd be filing again if we didn't intervene. I looked her in the eye. Of course they did. After she left, I stared at the door for a long time. She won't stop, I said finally. David sat beside me, rubbed his face. What do? We hit back. He blinked. You mean? I mean we stopped pretending we're not in a fucking war. That week I hired a private investigator. It cost more than I was comfortable with, but I didn't care. I wanted records, video, photos, witnesses. I wanted proof that this woman was not just obsessed. She was dangerous. While the PI worked, we filed for a protective order. At first, our lawyer wasn't sure we had enough. Then I showed her the pie, the blanket, the photo, the late-night driveway footage. She didn't hesitate. David finally came around when the PI delivered the first round of findings. His mother had been to our son's daycare. Twice. No pickup attempt. Just watched. Stood across the street and stared through the fence. When the daycare staff confronted her, she said she was checking in. She never mentioned it to David. Never to me. I printed out the report and left it on his pillow. When he read it, he cried. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I should have seen this sooner. I didn't want to believe." I looked at him and said, "We don't have the luxury of belief anymore. We have evidence. Now we use it." The next day, I got the call that nearly shattered me. Our daycare called. She'd tried to pick him up. Said she was his legal guardian. Gave them his full name. My full name. Even our address. They refused. Called me immediately. By the time I arrived, she was gone. But the message was clear. She'd stopped playing. Now she was taking. I held my son so tight he started to cry. And when David met me at the daycare and saw the look on my face, he knew. "I'm calling the judge," I said. "We file today. Emergency hearing. Restraining order. Full documentation." David didn't argue. That night, as I packed a bag just in case we had to leave suddenly, I found something in the mailbox. No stamp. No envelope. Just a folded sheet of paper with 4 words. He was mine first. I sat on the kitchen floor and shook. Then I stood, locked every door, and called the lawyer. She wanted war? Then let's fucking go. Court was a blur of cold benches, stale air, and the buzz of fluorescent lights. Our lawyer was sharp, steady, thank God, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I clutched the folder of evidence. Photos, statements, the footage of her at the daycare fence, the blanket, the note. The judge read everything silently. When she reached the daycare report, she paused, looked up. "She falsely claimed guardianship of your child?" I nodded. "And attempted to remove him from daycare without parental consent?" "Yes," David spoke next. His voice was raw. "Your Honor, she's not confused. She's obsessed. We didn't want to believe it, but we can't ignore the pattern anymore." His words echoed off the courtroom walls. I kept my eyes on the floor. This was the same man who once told me I was being dramatic when I said she was dangerous. Now he was helping me build the case. Funny how fast a man can shift when he realizes his mother might actually steal his child. The judge signed the emergency restraining order that day. No contact, no proximity, no visits. It was temporary, but it was something. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt rage, because she didn't show up, didn't bother to come, didn't bother to defend herself. That silence, it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. She was planning her next fucking move, and I wasn't wrong. 3 nights later, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. Not a knock, not a cry, a soft chime. The nursery mobile. It was spinning, slowly, quietly, music playing. I froze. Then I moved. Ran down the hallway, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. David followed, confused, half asleep. I burst into the nursery, flipped on the light. Empty. The mobile swayed, its plastic stars circling above the crib. But the window? The lock was scratched. Tiny shavings of paint flaked to the floor beneath it. David stood in the doorway, speechless. "She was here," I said. He didn't argue. Didn't call me paranoid. He just checked the rest of the house. When he came back, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "She left something," he whispered. He handed me a small photo. A hospital bracelet. Ours. From the day our son was born. "How the fuck did she get that?" "I never gave her that," I said. David looked sick. "I think she took it. From the trash, maybe? Or your drawer? I don't know." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't obsession anymore. This was possession. She didn't want to be involved. She wanted to replace me. That night, I slept in the nursery with a knife under the pillow. David blocked her number, changed the locks. We installed new alarms, motion sensors, glass break detectors, but none of it changed the truth. She'd already been inside, and now she knew exactly how to come back. We moved out within 48 hours. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't post online. Didn't even tell our friends until after we were gone. The lawyer called it strategic relocation. I called it survival. The new house was 2 hours away, smaller, older, but clean. Quiet. No memories in the walls. David stayed busy setting up cameras, reinforcing locks. I kept our son close, always in the same room, never out of sight. Every creak, every car door outside made my heart skip. I couldn't relax. Not even for a second. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. 2 days in, she found us. A flower delivery. No card. Just a single white rose in a glass vase, left on our new porch. No one had the address. Not even David's sister. Not even the daycare. But she did. He wanted to call the police. I said no. "This is what she wants," I told him. "To make us react. To make us look unstable. We need to outsmart her." So we set a trap. I asked our PI to park nearby in an unmarked car with a zoom lens and a list of tags. I stayed inside. Waited. 3 nights later, she came back. Didn't knock. Didn't try the door. She just stood at the edge of the yard, watching. PI got the photos. Clear shots. Time-stamped. The lawyer filed immediately for a permanent order. Attached every photo, every complaint, every shred of proof we had. But the real crack came when David's sister called. She was crying. "Mom told me you were trying to disappear," she said. I didn't believe her until I saw the photos. What photos? She posted pictures of your front porch, said you were mentally unstable, that she had to keep an eye on the baby. That was the final straw. We filed harassment charges, stalking. We pushed for supervised psychiatric evaluation. We told the judge she was escalating, that it wouldn't stop unless someone forced it to. But nothing prepared me for what came next. The daycare director called again. She sounded shaky. She just showed up again. Said she was the legal guardian. Tried to use a forged custody letter. This time we pressed charges. No warnings, no calls, no more grace. She was arrested the next day for attempted interference with custody. David cried when the officer told us. I didn't. I sat still, holding our son close, and whispered one thing in his ear. She won't hurt you again. And I meant it. Court felt different this time. Not cold, not distant, focused. We had evidence, witnesses, a judge who looked like she'd seen too many cases just like ours. The kind where people didn't speak up until it was too late. She listened. To everything. The CPS records, the daycare testimony, the photos, the forged letter. And then she looked straight at my mother-in-law and said, "Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" She smiled. That same damn smile. Calm. Polite. Like this was some misunderstanding between neighbors. Like she hadn't tried to dismantle our lives piece by piece. But something cracked when the judge read the full report aloud. When she used the words criminal trespass, forgery, harassment, endangerment. Her fingers twitched. Her foot tapped. Her mask slipped. And David, David, he finally stood up. He turned to the court and said, I spent too long trying to protect both my mother and my wife. That ends now. My mother is not safe. Not for my son. Not for our family. I didn't cry, I thought I would, but I felt, still, like something had finally clicked into place. The judge granted a 5-year restraining order, full no contact. Any violation would lead to immediate jail time. And just like that, the courtroom emptied. Outside, David turned to me and said, You saved us. I looked at him. Really looked. You helped. I was late. But you showed up. He nodded. I'm not going back, he said quietly. Neither am I. That night, we packed up what we needed and left again. This time, not in fear, but in choice. We sold the house, burned the old address off every record. New numbers, new emails, new locks, a clean break. On our last night in the house, I walked into the nursery. Empty crib, packed shelves, quiet. I stood in the center of the room and closed my eyes. Then I whispered to the space she'd tried to invade, You don't own this anymore. And I meant every fucking word. The fallout came fast. And public. 2 days after the court ruling, she went online. Long posts, crocodile tears, claims of elder abuse, that David had been brainwashed, that I had alienated her grandson, that she was fighting for her family. Bullshit. But the kind that spreads. Within hours, her friends, some extended family, even a couple of David's old cousins started messaging us. Guilt-tripping. Demanding explanations. One even said, A mother's love is sacred. You'll regret turning your back on her. David read the message out loud, then deleted it without blinking. She used to braid my hair, he said, dead calm. And she also tried to steal my son. I don't owe her anything. We stayed quiet at first, but silence started to look like guilt. So I posted once. Just one statement. A photo of the court documents. A note. There are 2 sides to every story. Ours comes with legal proof. The comments went quiet after that. Her social circle shrank overnight. Funny how fast people backpedal when truth enters the chat. But it wasn't over. Because trauma doesn't vanish when the threat does. The first time I took my son to the park, I had a panic attack. A woman with the same haircut as her walked past us and I couldn't breathe. I clutched him so tight he started to cry. David had to sit me down on the grass and talk me through it. She's not here, he said. She won't ever be here again. I know, I whispered. But my body doesn't believe it yet. Therapy helped, slowly. But what helped more was watching our son laugh again. Sleep peacefully. Not flinch when the doorbell rang. He was healing faster than we were. One afternoon he looked up at me and said, Mommy happy? And for the first time in months, I didn't have to fake a smile. Yeah, baby, I said. Mommy's getting better. David was healing too. He started calling his dad again. Something he hadn't done since the fallout. They met up, just the 2 of them. When he came home, he told me something that stopped me cold. She did this to him too. Not with custody, but control, isolation, guilt, all of it. Generational. Toxicity passed down like heirlooms. But we weren't keeping it. We were breaking that shit right here. Right now. The car was packed by sunrise. Boxes in the back seat. Our son's favorite blanket tucked next to his car seat. The last keys to the old house sealed in an envelope we'd leave behind. It was quiet. Not sad, just quiet. Like the air right after a storm. David checked the locks one last time, then slid into the driver's seat beside me. You sure? He asked. I looked in the rearview mirror. Our son was asleep. Thumb in his mouth. Peaceful. I've never been more sure, I said. The city faded behind us slowly. Familiar streets. Old grocery stores. That bench I used to cry on after CPS came. It didn't hurt anymore. Just looked like someone else's life. Because it was. This wasn't running. This was a clean cut. A restart. A declaration that our family belonged to us and no one else. Not to a woman who thought biology gave her rights. Not to relatives who stayed silent. Not to a system that almost believed her. Us. We had signed the final agreement 2 days earlier. Full custody protections, financial restitution, supervised restrictions if she ever dared to file again. The judge had looked at me and said, "You did everything right." I didn't feel proud. I felt tired. But beneath that, something sturdier was growing. Not vengeance. Not even relief. Freedom. We pulled off at a rest stop around mid-morning. David went inside for coffee. I opened the back door and sat with my son while he napped. I looked down at his tiny face, his impossibly long lashes, and thought about everything we'd almost lost, and everything we were about to build. No porch cameras, no hidden notes, no half-washed threats wrapped in apple pie. Just a front door no one had a key to but us, a name no one else would use, a family that started here and now. David came back, handed me a coffee. "Still ready?" I smiled. "Let's go home." And we drove. Windows down, music low, no ghosts in the rear view. Just sky ahead.